First of all, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining the session today on the state of mobile driver's licenses in the US. There's a lot going on here. We have a lot to cover. So, as a quick introduction, I'm Zach Jones. I lead the product partnerships at Trinsic. For a little bit more context on what Trinsic does, um, Trinsic's digital ID aggregation platform. So we integrate with mobile driver's licenses, EIDs in Europe, bank IDs, reusable ID networks, and government digital ID wallets all around the world. So my job is essentially to figure out who are the identity providers and the wallet providers, and partner with them to kind of surface their verification option through Trinsic's network. And then Trinsic goes out and sells to, companies who need to verify their users and are looking to do that with a digital ID rather than, a physical document upload every time, right? So, um, this is a way to kind of augment your typical onboarding or verification process by allowing a user to present their mobile driver's license instead of taking a picture of their physical driver's license. Um, so that's a quick intro to what we do and my role here. So kind of leading the product partnerships function. Uh, I've, I work with all the ID providers that are currently integrated in our network, and then we're tracking another 200 plus digital ID networks around the world. So a big part of my job is just staying informed on kind of what's happening in the digital ID landscape globally, what things are changing, what new standards are launching, wallet applications are launching, and then, helping our customers stay aware and informed, and then keeping our product kind of ahead of the curve of what's coming up. Um, so since Trinsic is based in the US and mobile driver's licenses are kind of, one of the largest potential like digital ID movements happening here in a while, there is no national digital ID in the United States in the same way that there is in many other countries. So the mobile driver's license is a very exciting development within the digital ID space. Um, while this is a fairly new kind of phenomenon or movement. Right now, 76% of Americans live in a state where a mobile driver's license is either already active or in development, right? So that means that either they could go download an application and get a mobile driver's license today, or, there is some stage of progress, whether that means their state is, months away from launching or a year or two away from launching. A mobile driver's license application. So again, while this is fairly new, there's already a lot of momentum and progress happening in the US. And currently, about 41% of Americans live in states where mDLs are active. Um, so a lot of large population states like California, New York already have mobile driver's licenses live and available for end users. Um, a little bit of the history of the mobile driver's license launches per year. This is a graphic that we created um, last year and we continuously update. So showing kind of what mobile IDs or mobile driver's licenses have launched over time. LA Wallet in Louisiana was the first to launch in 2018, with Arizona following in 2020. Um, and then momentum has picked up since. So seven new states or six states in Puerto Rico launched in 2024. Our prediction, which we made at the end of last year, 12 months ago, was that we would see even more launches in 2025. So far, we have Arkansas, Alaska, Montana, and North Dakota. We believe there will still be a few more to go live within the next few months, to close out 2025, which could get us to close to 30 states. Um, it's worth noting that there are a few mobile driver's license programs that are temporarily suspended and will be relaunching soon, we believe, in various states like Florida and Oklahoma. Um, Shown a different way, the implementation status here of like what's going on. Um, Again, there's about 41% have an active mobile driver's license. Another section are in development. There's another distinction where The mobile driver's license has been legislated or it's considered like a legal form of ID and it's in process at some point, but maybe not in development yet. And others are paused. So this is a map that AAMVA puts out related to the mobile driver's license implementations in the US. So part of this presentation are resources that Trinsic has accumulated, and another part is going to be like sharing helpful resources with you all from other industry bodies. So AAMVA is one of those industry bodies who is a huge, supporter and proponent of the mobile driver's license ecosystem. AAMVA maintains the digital trust service, so they have essentially given a darker color, darker purple color to the states that have entered their public keys in the digital trust service. The lighter purple color means that the state currently has an interoperable mobile driver's license implementation. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a few slides. And then the dotted purple means that there's an interoperable implementation in progress. And then you can see there's a few other colors about kind of other things in progress or started or being attempted, right? So this is AAMVA's map of the different jurisdictions and kind of who is live, who's interoperable, who has a public key in the digital trust service. Right now, there are, I think, 17 different mobile driver's license wallets live across the US. So when you look at Apple, Google, and Samsung wallets being, three of those, many states have state-specific wallets as well. So there's still a lot of fragmentation. There's about 20, I think 21 states live and 17 different wallets. We'll show this in a few other ways on a later slide as well, visually. Um, awesome. Great. Yeah, let me just highlight this question as well. Another recommendation here, MDL Connection is another amazing resource, highly recommended. So folks can kind of take that down as a resource as well to check out. There's a few good sites out there that are kind of tracking the adoption and implementation status of MDLs around the US. Awesome. Thanks for that comment. So the mobile driver's license, like the initial use case, because when you think about having a mobile driver's license credential in your wallet, the first question that most people ask is, what can I do with it, right? Like, who accepts the mobile ID? What can I do with it? And the big use case that kind of like launched a lot of states and is like kind of follows on when they announce a mobile ID, they're oftentimes announcing that an airport in that state is going to accept the digital ID as a form of identification in order to board a plane, right? So the TSA now maintains, if you visit the link below, and we'll send out these resources after, the TSA maintains a list of participating states that have eligible digital IDs where you can use them, to board a plane. And there's other maps that will show you which airports around the country, support a digital ID to board a plane. If you've traveled recently, you've probably seen signs if you've been in certain airports that say that a digital ID is accepted. And yeah, it's one of the key use cases. So a couple other graphics here just to kind of showcase like who supports what and kind of what's going on in the ecosystem here. This is a breakdown of which states support which wallets. So as you can see, certain states support a single wallet, right? Like Utah or Virginia, or Alaska or Louisiana just have or New York, for example, just have a single application where anybody who wants a mobile driver's license or a mobile ID would download that application. Other states like Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Maryland, Iowa have a lot of optionality where a user could hold their mobile ID in Google Wallet, Apple Wallet, Samsung Wallet, or a state-specific mobile ID application. Um, so in our latest calculation, there are 11 states that support Apple Wallet. And then Puerto Rico makes it kind of 12 jurisdictions. Google has 9 states where you can get a mobile driver's license credential in your Google Wallet. But Google also has something a little bit different, which is called ID Pass, which is not a mobile driver's license, but it is also a mobile ID that is acceptable at TSA. And ID Pass is a derived passport credential. Apple has publicly stated that they will be doing this as well, though it's not live yet. But the Google ID Pass is theoretically available to anybody with a passport. So it's not based on if you live in a state like I do that doesn't have a mobile driver's license yet, you could get an ID pass and have kind of a standards compliant and accepted digital ID for boarding a plane without having to wait for your state's legislators to kind of legislate the MDL and pick a vendor and implement it. Um, Samsung Wallet also supports 7 states currently. All of these numbers are constantly going up. So North Dakota launched very recently, I think last week or maybe the week prior. So we are always having to update these graphics and update the counts and who supports what. Um, IDEMIA is a large vendor in this space as well, and their approach has been to create state-specific apps. So you see in that column Arizona Mobile ID, Arkansas Mobile ID, New York Mobile ID. So they're powered by the same vendor, kind of similar technology stack, but they're not, it's not one IDEMIA wallet that supports 7 states. It's kind of their technology that creates a state-specific instance of that application. Um, and then there's 6 standalone wallet apps out there. So Alaska, California, My Colorado, LA Wallet, Utah, and the Virginia Mobile ID. All built by different vendors and all standalone applications with different levels of services in there. So Another another way to visualize this, this is a graphic directly from our ebook, which on the state and mobile driver's license adoption, we'll send that out as a follow-up to this. So, you're welcome to take screenshots. We're going to post the recording, but also you'll get some more of this content kind of delivered to you via email afterwards. Um, awesome. Yeah. One question related to the ID pass, does the source passport need to be an e-passport or can a conventional passport be used to derive the Google ID? I believe that the passport does need to be like an e-passport with NFC enabled. So only that kind of secure transferring of the attributes and kind of hardware-based verification is, I think, considered like high enough assurance in order to create the derived ID pass credential. That's my current understanding. That's a good question. Um, awesome. So when people talk about mobile driver's licenses, they often talk about standards, and the main standard at play here is the ISO 18013 standard. So this is kind of a standard that was created originally about 6 years ago and kind of has been updated and other pieces have been added, annexes have been added, and other parts have been added to support new use cases and interaction models. The standard has a lot of momentum and support here in the US, but there's also global momentum around this. And there are other countries that have standards compliance mobile driver's licenses already issued, like Australia, Austria, Japan, and then others are going to be following on soon. Um, Within the standard, the ISO 18013-5 was kind of the first, publication here, which was meant to support in-person use cases or proximity use cases. So when you're presenting your mobile ID or mobile driver's license at the airport to TSA, that is kind of, think of that as like an in-person or proximity-based use case where you can present your mobile ID in person at a vendor. You need some specific hardware in order to read and like securely transfer that data. And so that is kind of a lot of the wallets support this, or basically all of the wallets support this in-person or proximity use case. And this is what's been live in the airports for many years now, and is increasingly now being supported for other types of use cases in person, like age verification for restricted goods at a stadium, for example. So you may have an automated like beer kiosk or something where you can present your mobile ID to prove that you're of age to be able to purchase that an alcoholic beverage, and then you can check out, with a credit card without having an attendant there necessarily to check your ID. Um, obviously other use cases in there. I think what's exciting right now, and this was in development for a long time, was the ISO 18013-7 or Part 7 standard. So this supports remote verification in online use cases. So this was published a year ago. Still not implemented in most wallets. The next slide will kind of show some of the differences and who's implemented what based on our understanding. Um, and there are a few different interaction profiles supported within this part of the standard. Um, REST API, OpenID for verifiable presentation, and the digital credentials API. So initially, kind of when the Dash 7 standard was published, people were very excited about remote verification. And there was a common kind of sentiment that, well, you're just going to support Dash 7, you'll be able to remotely verify any of the MDL wallets, right? Like that is kind of, one school of thought. And I think over time that will prove to be true. But currently, things are still quite fragmented because different wallets have implemented different things or not implemented this yet. And because there are multiple different kind of interaction profiles or presentation mechanisms, if you may support one of them, but the wallet may not support that one as well. So then you need to go support multiple things within the standard, which becomes more complicated. So we'll talk a little bit more about that um, in the next slide. So let me. So this is a graphic that we made based on our best understanding. Some of these things, again, these things are constantly changing. So even if this is made within the last month, things may be slightly different. But here is kind of what types of, presentation mechanisms or standards are supported within the wallets. Um, Basically, everybody supports the 18013-5 standard in general. Um, but within the remote verification standard of Dash 7, again, there's these three interaction profiles, and most of these are not supported. So Alaska launched recently and like notably supports the REST API version. Um, and then, Google and Apple have kind of made announcements and have APIs related to what's called the Digital Credentials API, which is, very exciting and interesting. And then, but a number of wallets support kind of like a proprietary verification mechanism. So for a while, there's been the ability to have like a verify with Apple Wallet, verify with Google Wallet, verify with Samsung Wallet, um, and kind of remotely verify that way in more of a proprietary manner that, is maybe there's some standards underneath the hood a little bit, but it's not that you've integrated one standard and you get to now verify all of those wallets necessarily. So similarly, with kind of some of the IDEMIA wallets, California DMV and LA Wallet, there are ways to remotely verify it in kind of a proprietary manner at this point. Um, Again, all things we believe will eventually converge to the standards. It's just a matter of time, right? So, um, yeah, the state of the ecosystem is still a bit fragmented. Um, Okay. So MDL adoption is obviously a hot topic. Like, how many people have a mobile driver's license? Like, how worthwhile is this to look at or implement, right? This is a very hard question to answer because the data is not readily available publicly, right? So certain states or jurisdictions will make an announcement, or it will be kind of mentioned offhandedly in an article. So there's every once in a while there'll be an article about Ohio, and it will just say there's been 400,000 MDLs issued in Ohio or something, right? California is the only state that we found that has kind of a public dashboard of the mobile driver's licenses that have been issued. Um, our kind of this is another one of this is more of our graphic, very similar to the AAMVA graphic about kind of who is live. Um, Although we're just looking at where there's an active MDL and not necessarily making distinctions between if they're in the digital trust service or if the implementation is interoperable yet or anything like that. So, um, from kind of a high level point of view, over 40% of states have an active MDL, which is a pretty high adoption rate. And within those, a lot of them are fairly populous states like, New York, Maryland, Virginia, California, Arizona, Colorado, all fairly populous states. Um, Numerically, and this again is based on kind of the best data that we have available, which is not perfect or not great all the time. Um, the This is kind of our chart of like MDL adoption data. So a few disclaimers here. One, we believe this is definitely a low end estimate because again, a lot of this data isn't publicly available and the source here might be, it could be over a year old at this point. Some states will report adoption data again, like kind of privately to AAMVA or something like that, and in which case, those numbers may be slightly more updated. Again, California is the only one that has like a public dashboard that we found that shows the number of unique people with an MDL. And then some states just don't have anything reported yet, right? Because they're new or they've launched recently. Um, One other disclaimer about this is that a couple like Louisiana and Colorado have the highest kind of issuance rate of a mobile ID. Some percentage of those that are counted here are not necessarily compliant with the ISO 18013 standard. So because on the timeline graphic you saw Louisiana launched before anybody else, they launched before the standard was formalized. Um, they have, a digital driving license. Some people make a distinction between an MDL, a mobile driver's license, kind of has the connotation that it is a standards compliant, ID, versus like a digital driving license, which more so means it's a digital representation of a driving license. It might not follow the standard, and it might be kind of used as more of like a flash pass where you can kind of present your mobile ID to law enforcement or present it at a convenience store. Um, but it might not, again, follow the same standards. Um, I think what's also interesting about this is the states, Louisiana and Colorado, with high adoption, the applications there support more functionality than simply holding a digital driver's license in a wallet. You can do things like hold your hunting and fishing license or apply for a new license or kind of renew your car registration. So there are other benefits to having the application that have driven significant user adoption, right? So again, with the question of once you get a mobile driver's license, what do you do with it? I mean, this is kind of flipping that question a little bit on its head and says, hey, we have a state services application called My Colorado or LA Wallet. And one thing you can do is get a mobile ID in there. The other thing you can do is all this other stuff to interact with your local government in a more seamless and efficient way. And that's actually a model that's more that we see more frequently in international markets where when a mobile ID launches or a digital ID launches, the first use case is kind of state services based. You're using it to log into a government portal, maybe pay your taxes, apply for things online, apply for a benefit or something like that. And then slowly the mobile ID or the digital ID in the international market opens up to like regulated use cases like banking and telcos and things like that. And then over time, they go into um, general private sector usage. So again, because the US is a bunch of states that kind of have their own authority to, release these programs and roll out applications that make sense for their jurisdiction. There isn't kind of a unified approach there yet. Um, and this is kind of the state of the ecosystem. Let me just take a quick pause and maybe a few questions. We'll see if anybody Um, yeah, was the 400K mDLs in Ohio real update or hyperbole? That's a real update. That's by corroborated by a GovTech article, I believe. In the ebook, we have all the sources linked and cited to all of the most recent numbers. So that's a real one. And then we also see New York is over 275,000 currently. That's awesome. I don't remember which number we have there, but we will note that and update it. Thank you. Okay, so a couple more little bit more information kind of about like what Trinsic does in this space and how kind of how what our approach is and how we view it. So Trinsic is currently integrated with some of the mDL wallets and have a bunch more in progress. We focus specifically on the remote verification use cases. So kind of the in-person verification is a little bit out of our purview. We generally kind of our product surfaces in just in online scenarios, right? So that's the thing that we're interested in. Um, when we often talk to companies that are considering like, do we build this capability or do we in-house or do we buy it? So we have a lot of like considerations that we'll often talk people through. So like we've shown earlier, um, there's a lot of variance kind of in the standards in the way that things are implemented currently and like the stages of implementation that currently exist within the market. So there isn't just like one thing you can adopt to inherit, all the MDL wallets, which is maybe a little bit of a misconception. We definitely hear from a lot of people that think that that's the case, and unfortunately, it isn't right now. Again, it may get there over time, but right now there's still a lot of fragmentation and variance in the market. Um, Kind of key management's another thing to point out is that again, even if you do, um, support some wallets directly, you need to be pretty careful with kind of how you're verifying them, managing keys from all the different states to understand if what you're getting back is a trustworthy and signed output from the right authority. Um, Different wallets output different data, so you have to, normalize that across your data model and figure out who gives what and at what level of assurance it comes back. Generally, all the mobile driver's licenses are proofed at a high level, but then the point about an additional validation or liveness or biometric matching often comes into play where could somebody have their brother's phone and prove their ID with that phone in order to onboard to like an age restricted site or something like that, right? And then you need to make sure what measures are in place to make sure the person presenting that ID is the right person and that it isn't, somebody else or a bad actor or something like that. Generally, a lot of those things are accounted for at the wallet level, but again, they vary in how they're implemented. And, some wallets may have really strong answers and processes for this, and others you may need to add like an additional verification in order to meet, the assurance level that you need. Um, there's also a lot of non-technical considerations here, like you need to essentially work with the wallet providers and the identity providers in order to figure out like kind of what you're allowed to do with the data, essentially. So just, it is not like a totally open and decentralized ecosystem where you just support a standard and suddenly there is data flowing into your systems. With kind of all of these, you need to be in contact at some level with, authorities and wallet providers to get permissions and kind of get approved to be a verifier. Um, and yeah, so anyways, a lot of considerations here. So awesome. So yeah, core value prop intrinsic here is that you can configure mobile driver's license acceptance, in our dashboard alongside a bunch of other digital IDs around the world. So while adoption of mDLs is still growing in the US, there are a number of markets where digital IDs and mobile IDs are like almost ubiquitous already. And you can get a lot of those benefits in one place. So, kind of to wrap up, we wanted to provide a quick overview of some of the learnings from the AAMVA Annual International Conference, which we went to a couple weeks ago in Phoenix. So AAMVA is the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. So essentially, all of the DMV operators in like kind of the U.S., the territory, U.S., continental U.S., the territories, and Canada, right? So there's 69 jurisdictions that are all represented here. Um, and there's a lot that kind of goes on related to DMV related business, but there's also a lot of talk about mobile ID and mobile driver's licenses because it is kind of the next big thing in, identity and driving license issuance. So a few of our reflections on the conference. So there's definitely a lot of industry momentum here. We got to see presentations from a lot of the major, like all the major wallet providers like Google, Apple, Samsung, IDEMIA, Thales, etc. We're kind of showcasing new capabilities, talking about partnerships, mobile ID verification partnerships that were going on, and different use cases that they're kind of actively pursuing or working on. And we saw a bunch of demos, both like live demos, recorded demos, showcasing in-person use cases and online remote verification use cases. So I hope the dog's barking in the background. I hope people can't hear that. Um, so within the presentations from the wallet providers, there were a number of kind of like logos shown of like large global brands that are basically planning to or announcing support for mobile driver's licenses. So places like Amazon, Turo, Chime, Uber were all kind of mentioned on slides from the wallet providers as being, early adopters in this space. So one of our kind of key drivers here that we think will happen is once users start to see the option to verify with a mobile ID, they will be a lot more inclined to go obtain a mobile ID because they know it'll be accepted to be used at Amazon or to be used at Uber. Okay, awesome. All right, let me just take a quick pause, see if there's any questions. Mhm. Okay, okay. So Trinsic did showed a couple of demos at the um, what was called like the Relying Party Showcase as part of the AAMVA conference. So we did a demo with Indeed showing how you could verify a job seeker with a mobile driver's license. This is the flow of the California DMV wallet. Um, it's super fast. If you blink, you might miss it, right? The whole demo is only 15 seconds long. It's not sped up. That is actually like how quick the verification is. So essentially what you saw was that the user scans, the user starts the journey on their desktop. They scan a QR code, which sends them into the California DMV wallet application, um, at which point they then consent, they kind of authenticate with the app and consent to sharing their data. So there's a Face ID, there's a consent screen, the user accepts that they're sharing that, and their identity is verified. Um, so that was one demo that we presented. Um, we also were able to demo what the flow looks like with the Digital Credentials API using the Google Wallet. So can show that here as well. So in this situation, the user is in the browser and they get this like kind of pop-up modal asking them to one, do they trust the site that they're on, that they're going to share data? And two, here's the consent screen. Are you sure you want to share the following fields with this website? And then the user clicks agree. They see kind of the privacy policies, the different provider, like the different players there, and then they again complete the verification flow. Um, it's Google Digital Credentials API. So just wanted to show these to give you an idea of the like the user experience at play here. The thing that's really appealing to all the relying parties and businesses that we talk to is that this is a very like fast and frictionless experience for a user. They don't need to find, a physical document or a physical credential. They just need to click a couple buttons, authenticate on their wallet device or application on their device, and then complete a verification with a highly trusted and secure kind of sharing of credential attributes. Just one more demo to show the user experience here of Samsung Wallet. So the user selects that, they go open the Samsung Wallet app, and again, a lot of this will be familiar, but while these are all similar in nature, there's a lot of like quirks and nuances, right? So this is kind of the information request. Here's the party that's requesting your data. Here are the fields that they're requesting. The user then needs to kind of do either a biometric verification or enter their PIN in order to authenticate, and then they complete the share. Um, awesome. So a couple final reflections here to kind of wrap up this. The AAMVA International Conference brings together a lot of people from around the world. So while it's kind of North America focused, there's people coming from different countries everywhere. And it seems like there's a lot of kind of ecosystem alignment towards moving towards the standards, enabling relying party use cases in the private sector and the public sector, and that people are really expecting adoption to accelerate in the next, 12 months or so. So, adoption is still growing and use cases are just kind of rolling out right now, but we kind of think this will be a bit of a snowball effect. Well, things are going to pick up momentum really quickly once a few of them get live. We originally made a prediction, I think when we first published the mDL ebook, like a year and a half ago, that we could see 100 million mobile driver's licenses by the end of 2026. That was kind of our aggressive or optimistic prediction. I think we're tracking a little bit below that right now. But we still think that there's a chance we get to a significant growth rate, right? So, again, because remote verification is still kind of like we believe remote verification is the killer use case, but it's still a little bit early. Like Trinsic is trying to make it easier to adopt mobile driver's licenses without having to, spend a ton of time building new integrations and maintaining connections to all these different wallets. We believe that once some of these key use cases get off the ground, we could see adoption really start to pick up quickly. Um, so when we talk to relying parties or businesses that are looking to accept mobile driver's licenses, um, I think, first it's important to recognize that the fragmentation is still there. So there is a need to kind of integrate individually with a number of different wallets and state applications. So it's fairly time consuming and resource intensive at the moment. One way to think about this, rather than thinking about like a national mDL strategy, is to test mDL acceptance in specific states that are early adopters and have reasonably high adoption rates. So thinking about California, New York, Arizona, Colorado, Louisiana, and other states where there are a significant number of users that already have a mobile driver's license and are, somewhat familiar with the flow, could be a good way to kind of start integrating this and at least conceptually understand like how it works and how it fits into existing onboarding flows. Um, the other guidance is like a lot of the relying parties and businesses that we talk to are interested in accepting digital IDs generally, right? So mobile driver's licenses are just one form of digital ID. As adoption grows in the US, there are maybe other similar forms of digital ID that you could start accepting in the European geographies or in Asia or something like that. Um, awesome. So yeah, just to wrap up, there's a lot of great momentum happening in the space. Relying parties are interested. They're starting to integrate. They're starting to accept mobile driver's licenses as a way to streamline onboarding and reduce risk. Um, I think there's, we're going to see a lot of like pilots and activities and things happening in the next like six months or so. And then after that, I think we'll get kind of more and more production deployments that are kind of publicly notable, which will raise the awareness of, that mobile driver's license is a thing and consumers want it. Because if you talk to somebody who lives in a state with a mobile ID, and they're not really deep in the identity space already, they might not even know that it exists. Or maybe they've seen something about it and they don't really know what they can do with it, so they haven't bothered to download it or get set up or get onboarded yet, right? So we do believe this is kind of, going to be a lot more mainstream over the next year or two. The wallet providers are kind of well positioned to deliver great user experience. Um, and then once we see more relying party use cases come online, it'll be more and more clear to the consumer why they should prioritize, getting their mobile ID or mobile driver's license. Um, awesome. So yeah, Trinsic helps you verify users 10 times faster using a digital ID they already have. Um, This is a way to reduce fraud, cost less money in your onboarding flow. Always happy to talk more about that. And if there are, we'll have time for questions now. And we'll also just make available some of the resources that we have, other content that we do. So afterwards, you'll get an updated version of the mobile driver's license report. So a lot of the data you'll see in there with like sources cited and links to other information. We also talk more about global mDL adoption within that report as well. We have a broader digital ID adoption report, which talks about kind of digital ID more broadly, government EID, wallets, bank IDs, reusable IDs, not just the mobile driver's license. And then we also have our opportunity zones report, which kind of highlights key geographies around the world where we recommend people get started accepting digital IDs. And lastly, we have the Future of Identity podcast, which we've recently done some new episodes that we're going to be recording, that we've just recorded and will be put out soon. You'll hear our CEO, Riley, talk with people, identity people who have built ecosystems and wallets and kind of what they've learned from, launching digital IDs. So that is all for the planned content here. I will get into the questions. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining and listening in. Okay. Yeah, so this question was from a little while ago. How does this work across devices? Can a user hold the same mDL across two or more phones? I believe it depends on the geography or it depends on the state. In general, though, a user can hold the same mDL across two or more devices because you can have an mDL on like your Apple Watch, for example, or on your smartwatch. So if you might need to pay for something using Apple Pay on your watch, you could also present mobile ID on your watch. So in general, this is supported. I think maybe some states or platforms don't support it. Um, in the California adoption dashboard, you'll see that there's a, over 2 million mDLs like issued and 1.2 or something million unique users, right? So they actually make the distinction between mDLs issued. This also makes it harder to count the adoption data because, we're reporting the unique users with mDLs, but there's actually way more mDLs that have been issued because some of them are across multiple devices. It's a good question. Have you seen implementations that incorporate mDL with agentic AI, where the agent utilizes mDL to automate ID presentation to access services? This is kind of the proof of concept that we did with Indeed and presented. I think I would say it's pretty early stages in terms of what, it's not something that's live and in production necessarily, but this is kind of the demo that we built where, you could have a job seeker has an agent kind of operating on their behalf, trying to find opportunities, but that job seeker is verified, using their mDL to be not a bot, right? They're a real person behind the device. Awesome. Okay, what area of state government is overseeing the state's implementation? Generally, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, is, again, this is kind of a quirk of the US. It's not similar or analogous to overseas, where the department that licenses people to drive becomes like the de facto identity issuer. So it is a little bit odd, and I think it does at some level hinder adoption because it's so fragmented across every state and every DMV. And as staffing changes and legislation changes and budget changes, certain projects get postponed or delayed because it's kind of up to the state government and like this specific department within there. There's other offices of like technology and innovation that are oftentimes involved as well. Um, and yeah, awesome. Okay, appreciate it. Glad it was insightful. Would there ever be a use case of one wallet holding mDLs for several people or identities? That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, there are definitely use cases where one wallet could hold other credentials for other people. So at the AAMVA event, um, showcase, one of the things that we saw across some of the European wallets that are being developed is people being able to hold things like car registration credentials alongside a driver's license and an ID document and like an insurance document or something like that. So there's definitely wallets support multiple different types of credentials. I generally think that like it's tied to the individual person, but multiple people could have the same insurance card, right? Like multiple people in your family could have the same insurance card and potentially not as much for an mDL because you need to be of age in order to obtain one, but you could presume that eventually your wallet could hold something like certificates for your kids or something like that. Um, and that's feasible, but yeah. Oh yeah, similar question here. Have you seen anybody putting birth certificates in a wallet? I believe this is happening somewhere. I don't This is not quite my area of expertise. Again, I think it is a use case that like people are looking at and is being explored. But I don't know 100%. Good question though. Our 100 million uptake estimate was based on we were projecting like actual registrations. So again, optimistic, kind of an aggressive estimate for sure. Currently, like right now, if everybody who was lived in a state with an mDL got one today, just randomly, like we would hit that number. So availability, it's already available to over 100 million people in the US, but like the actual adoption is a fraction of that right now. Um, so awesome. Great. I think that is all the questions here. So if people have other questions, please, share them in the chat. We have a couple more minutes, but if not, we're happy to wrap up. I think Um, yeah, one of the things, yeah, we need an update session like this every quarter, no pressure. Yeah, we are trying to update our resources frequently. I mean, we update a lot of the graphics kind of on an ongoing basis. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, I tend to post about like when a new state launches or when we have like a new graphic about kind of the space here. And then the mDL ebook that we have available on the website, we just updated over the last few weeks. So that is, I think we originally published it a year ago. We updated it in April. We updated it again, at the end of September, early October. So yeah, try to keep things as up to date as possible, but follow on LinkedIn for updates. And then, if you have questions, you can always ping me. So awesome. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate everybody who joined here. We will send out a follow-up, with more information and resources. And yeah, talk to you soon. Thanks all.